Today being June 7th, 2017, the Charlton Planning Board will open our meeting with the agenda. We have some planning board bills to pay. We have Worcester Telegram Gazette for $108, postage due for $150. We have a cell phone for $93.05. Thomas Brothers and West.
That's these annual legal case, Massachusetts case law updates the state send us, and then we get a bill for it.
Okay.
Annual. It's a summary of the land use cases in the state.
It's $172.14. We have another one from the Telegram Gazette for $301.60. All the invoices, one more here. Okay, and then we have a longevity for Jane here. All the invoices here are included with the statements. Do I have a motion to accept the bills as read?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have payroll. This would be for Alan and Jane for the payroll time of 6/12 to 6/17, 6/19 to 6/24, 6/26 to 7/1. Do I have a motion to accept the payroll for that period of time?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a little bit of correspondence here. One is the Zoning Board of Appeals for the Town of Charlton. At a meeting held on May 16, 2017, the Zoning Board of Appeals voted to approve a variance/special permit submitted by David Jenkins related to property located at 47 Carpenter Hill Road. Presently located on the premises is 2 single-family houses and a garage. The petitioner seeks to expand an existing deck located on the southern side of the southern house to the east to connect to an existing deck and porch. There was a motion to grant the special permit variance. Zoning Board of Appeals for the Town of Charlton at a meeting held on April 4th, 2017, and April 13th, 2017, and April 18th, 2017, April 25th, 2017, and May 4th, 2017. The Zoning Board of Appeals voted to deny an appeal of a ZEO cease and desist letter dating November 26, 2016, submitted by Wood Recycling Incorporated and Southbridge Recycling Park, related to property located at Valley Road, partial 47B3, 47B4. Quite a lengthy hearings.
The Casella. It's the Casella thing. With the retention basin.
Oh, okay. That was denied. And we have something here from Kevin Kosneski. It's a draft for a 2018 UPWP meeting notice of agenda. Attached is a public meeting notice and agenda regarding the draft 2018 Unified Planning Work Program. The meeting will be held on Wednesday, May 31st at 5 p.m. at the Central Mass Regional Planner's Office. Is that something you're gonna go to, Alan?
No, it's a regional. It's part of their MPO role on federal funding, and there's nothing Charlton related. It's really a Worcester update. They're changing some things for the Worcester Regional Transit Authority.
And we have a notice for Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day, which will be Saturday, June 24th, 2017, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. The solid waste service facility at 165 Barefoot Road across from the landfill. This event is open to Southbridge and Charlton residents only. That's it for correspondence. Sure.
Hi, how are you? We have one A&R submitted by the Roman Catholic Diocese of Worcester on behalf of St. Joseph Church. Mr. Bond's property next door, he had approached the diocese, and before he puts it on the market, after going over with his realtor our village zoning, he was short about 3.5 feet for a number that would allow possibly somebody to buy in and do mixed use zoning, you know, that type of development. So he asked, and they were just nice enough to give to him, as long as he went to Burton Engineering on his own, 571 square feet. So it's just moving the lot line to the left, giving him a little less than 4 feet of frontage, 571 square feet. Father Reedy from the Worcester office is an attorney, and he handled it, and we went over it, and it meets everything. I recommend standard approval.
Any questions at this point?
I would like to make a motion to approve the A&R.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's what's the easiest.
Yeah.
All on one side.
It's rare. Look on that list with our notes. Got enough stuff.
Sure. Anything else?
Sure. A couple of subdivision and site plan field items. Had a really good meeting with Clea Blair at your request from your last meeting about finishing up out at Blackwell Drive. And we also talked to Colin Novick at the Greater Worcester Land Trust about the open space transfer. So I didn't print it out for you, I just tell you he's confirmed in writing in an email that even though you asked if he'd wrap it up by September, he's gonna try to wrap it up in the next month. So if he's delayed, at least he'll still make your September deadline. He'd like to get the conveyance done to the Greater Worcester Land Trust for the open space in the next 4 weeks or so. And that involved Jim Cosgrove, our attorney, George Carizzi, his attorney, and the Greater Worcester Land Trust attorney. So I don't think it'll be 30 days, I think it'll be 60, but it meets your deadline of wrapping up in the fall. He'll get the road work done in the next month, including finishing the outlet on the retention basin, and he'd like to come in August and touch base with you about heading for the October town meeting to get the road accepted. And I think the schedule will work, so that's on rolling well. I wanted to bring up also briefly and get some direction from the board and make a recommendation on Hammond Woods. We've been holding since 2013 the performance guarantee. It's $645,000. It's a tripartite with Southbridge Savings Bank, and they're getting toward the end of the subdivision, and we haven't seen any road work for a few years to wrap it up. And I'd like to be able to contact Tim and tell him that the board really would like him to meet with me and Mike Andrade in the field, walk the remaining work to be done, and set up a schedule and bring it back to the board. And if I were him, I'd be shooting for the October town meeting too, but it's not necessary. But there's only about, what, 3 lots left in
About
there?
3 lots left.
So I think it's time,
Yeah.
to push a little bit.
Yep.
Usually a developer on his or her own, halfway through, will finish, and usually you put that requirement to get the road going toward the end, but it's a very old subdivision, he bought at foreclosure, and from the old days, we didn't have that requirement, so you kinda have to push a little bit.
Yep. Make a recommendation that you write a letter to the developer.
Thanks. I'll set up something and
Yep.
report back to the
I
next
was
one.
up there the other day, and there's only like 3 house lots left.
Yeah.
And they were even pouring the foundations for them.
Yeah.
But the roadway's in good condition.
Yeah, it is in good condition. A couple people who live up there also, not lately, but have come by. I've seen them in the hall at the town hall, and they've said, now that they live there, it's a construction site, and they like it cleaned up too. And I've explained that, it's time to get going on that. I agree. So,
Dean, you got one quick more item? Or you wanna go?
Yeah, one more quick one, then I assume the applicant's in the hall, and I'll go get them to come in. But, last one is, the commercial solar site plan that's wrapping up at the corner of Carpenter Hill and Snake Hill Road. Mike and I have had a couple of good meetings with them, and they're adding the landscaping and everything. And I would assume at your July meeting, we'll probably be showing you the final version of everything. They've been very cooperative lately, the company from Florida that's doing it. And apparently they had changed some staff, and that's why no one had done anything for quite a while. But once we made the phone call, they jumped right on it. So Mike's been out there twice, I've been out there once. They're very nice people, and I think we're finally getting to wrapping up that whole vegetative buffer that's required under the project. So let me see where they are. Guys ready to come in and set up?
Pete, I wonder
You're on.
just in case they got a driving show.
By our clock here. If you don't have an easel, people put things right there, and that works perfect.
Yeah, we can.
You're up.
Sorry about that.
Oh, we're good. We're good. We can do- we can get going in just a minute.
The worst seat.
Hey, being 7:15, we have a public hearing, Charlton Planning Board. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 81-T, the Charlton zoning bylaws, the Charlton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, June 7th, 2017, at 7:15 in the Charlton Municipal Office Building, 37 Main Street, Charlton, Mass, regarding the application of DC Engineering and Surveying Incorporated on behalf of Rockaway Realty Trust, 45 J. Davis Road, Charlton, Mass, 01507, for approval of a definitive subdivision plan entitled Rockaway Realty Trust Subdivision. Said applicant proposed the construction of a 500-foot-long dead-end road along with 16 residential units consisting of 14 duplex units and 7 duplex buildings and 2 single-family house. The property is located easterly off of Route 31, northerly of J. Davis Road, and is zoned low-density residential R40. A copy of the proposed subdivision plan and application material are available for inspection at the planning board office and the town clerk's office during regular business hours. Any person interested or wish to be heard should appear at this time and place designated. Alan, if you could start us off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be as brief as possible just to set what this process is. Some folks are very familiar with it, other people it's the first time. The applicant, Ron, has submitted through his engineer, Jason Du Bois, the definitive subdivision plan that designs exactly what the chairman mentioned. In Massachusetts, anyone who's proposing to build a road and create either duplex or single-family housing development comes to the planning board for what they call a definitive subdivision plan. The planning board, we have an engineering consultant who reviews it. The planning board's authority is not in terms of the houses themselves. We don't get involved in the design of the house or anything. The planning board's authority is on the new road that's being constructed. That's what the board is reviewing and approving ultimately a design of, and the infrastructure that goes with it. That includes stormwater management drainage, that includes sidewalks, curbing, any grass strips along the roadway, any other amenities that are involved case by case, whether it's street lights, signage, that type of thing. The board opens it tonight, is not wrapping anything up. It always takes a few nights on any of these. After the applicant does about a 5-minute initial presentation, the board will initially do Q&A. I'll give a quick overview of the review by our consultants and any town departments that have offered comments, and we do have 2 brief ones. And then the chairman will open it up to any questions or comments from the public. This is down along Route 31 in the R40, just to clarify, in case there's any confusion, what the applicant proposed last year farther north on J. Davis Road for a zone change at town meeting that did not pass, this is not on that part of the property. That's farther north. This is down, fronting right on Route 31. This is not fronting or accessing from J. Davis Road, just to everybody to understand that. Mr. Chairman, I'd recommend that the applicant's engineer give a brief presentation, then I can provide the board with the consultant review for you.
Jason, start off.
Sure. For the record, Jason Dubois from DC Engineering Survey. So the property is located on City Depot Road. Let's see here. Coming down City Depot Road and you go underneath the Mass Pike overpass, that would be roughly in this area here. So you continue to head up City Depot Road, and the property would be right in this area here, right across from where you can see a portion of the lake come in. There is a zone line right here. This is where it's agricultural zoning on this part, and from here down is the low density R40. This is the portion that we're proposing right here to develop. Again, City Depot Road running right through here. Proposing access right through this area here, across a couple of existing wetland crossings that have been there for a while. The roadway comes up across both of those. There's some upland area in between that we're showing these 5 units. And then it'll bend up into here, the cul-de-sac up in this area. The overall length is about 500 feet to the center of the cul-de-sac. See the 16 units are scattered throughout here. The site topography is fairly steep. It basically comes up the hill from here, and it heads. The grade goes up quite a bit. So we tried to make the roadway as efficient as we could. The road grades aren't actually too bad. They're only about 1.5% coming in, and then the steepest they get is 4% right up to the back of the cul-de-sac. So there'll be some cuts along the front of these buildings here. This area here is fairly flat already. As far as drainage goes, the street's going to basically shed water to the low side, capture that in grass swales. There's a culvert here that's going to run under the street to another swale, and we tuck the basin kind of behind the units down over here, and that's ultimately going to go to a bioretention area for the stormwater treatment. And same as down here in this area here is flowing through a swale here and another smaller basin here with another bioretention area. There's a couple of small wetland fillings to get the road, just to widen the road slightly. I believe the total is under like 100 feet. We do have a replication area shown over here. Just so you know, we are on the agenda for the June 21st conservation meeting for that. Basically the same plan, just a little bit easier to see. We have tree planting shown, as you can see here, basically along both sides of the road as required. Street lights, there'd be one at the entrance here, one at the curve, one here, and then one at the back of the cul-de-sac. Also, there is existing sewer on Route 31 that will be tying into an existing stub that is already there. So we are adding 3 manholes, one here, and one here. And all these units will be served by public sewer. There is no water available, so we will be doing a well or multiple wells out here for that as well. I think that's pretty much all I have for right now.
Got some letters from.
Yes, if I can give the board copies, like I said, we have the different departments the opportunity to review, and two brief ones, and then the engineering one that I can get to and spend a few moments longer on that one. The first is from Kurt Meskis, the building commissioner, and he just briefly mentions that earlier this year the town got designated by the state as a green community, and that requires that lighting have to be LED. So there's a paragraph in here in which he gives you the specs for the street lighting design. You know, it's all jargon, but if you can, here's your copy of it. If you can, when you revise the plan after this evening for the next round of design, if you can incorporate that in, and we'll be in good shape. The second one is from the fire department. They noted that you've got the location for fire suppression on the plan, noting the cistern, but what we need for definitive plans prior to getting toward the end of the review is more detailed design. Planning board receives it, our engineer reviews it in partnership with the fire department, so he's just bringing that up. They both mentioned briefly what we talked about when we've had preliminary discussions about adding another word to the street name or changing it from Way, because James Way, if someone's making a 911 panic call, sounds awfully like James Way over off of Stafford Street. So you don't have to do it this evening, but as the process moves forward, we really need to have you propose that revision, how you want to handle it.
We meant to change that, so I
Okay,
apologize.
sounds good. And then,
It is. We got it.
the planning board's engineering consultant, let me just give you that review, copy for Jane and 5 around the table. I already emailed it to Jason when it came in today. It's pretty routine. Actually, there's less items than normal for any subdivision. We can have 80, 90, 100 comment items. For this particular one, because you've done some detailed design at this stage early in the process, there's only 37 comments. A couple of them are very, very routine, like adding a footnote here, adding some standard information on profile, that type of thing. The middle section of it, from item 21 on to 30, is engineer to engineer hydrology, about your stormwater management. Michael needs either more information or he's suggesting you make some changes. Just to explain to the general public, under Massachusetts state law, when someone designs a subdivision, they have to design the stormwater management so the amount of runoff that currently runs off the site is not exceeded by making areas impervious. So you've got 10 or 12 items there that Michael is telling you how to either add information or just asking for more information from you. I don't have anything particularly to point out that isn't routine, other than number 7. Again, Michael also caught what the fire department caught, that you're proposing the 20,000-gallon fire cistern and hydrant, but we need the design information. It has to be finalized through this process. And also under 31, he's mentioning that you're going to have cuts and fills along the road that he really suggests you come up in the next round of revision with some measures for management during the field construction of the roadway. We need a little more information for that. So unless the board has any questions on anything particularly in the Gray's review report, the main point of it is to give it to them at this point for when they go after this evening and do their next round of revisions. Basically the peer reviews, Mr. Chairman.
Jason, question.
Yes.
When it comes time to do like mailboxes and stuff, can you check with the post office on what they would like to see on the site plan for one multi-mailbox setup?
Sure.
Get the input from them as to where they would like to see it and how they'd like to have you do it. Could look into that. Jason, you're going to be going for the Conservation Board on June 21st.
Yep.
How many units are there gonna be, Jason?
There's 16 units total.
16 units?
Yes.
16 buildings?
No, 16 units. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 duplexes and 2 single family.
Can you point out where the 2 single-family ones are going to be?
Yep. There is one here
Yep.
and the other one's right here.
You're going to be drilling wells for the water source
Yes.
Just one other small item, the smaller retention basin in the next round, just add the fence around it. It only shows the fence on the bigger one.
Yeah, I thought because the other one was only like a 2 or 3 foot depression that it wouldn't be required. But is it
Liability in
required
these
also?
days, oh yeah, anything that happens, someone will come after the town and you.
Okay.
That's the way it works, so.
Any other questions from board members at this time?
Nope.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open it up to the public. If you would please state your name and your address and direct your questions to the board here and we'll get the answer for you. Anybody have any questions at this time? Gentleman in the back.
Richard Menard, 82 City Depot Road. I'm just wondering if we can get a better description of what the extent of the property is actually going to be for this development, how far it heads up in the northern portion of 31 City Depot. So with the extent of the last duplex at the far end of the cul-de-sac, how far do we expect that to be heading northerly?
I can tell you from looking at the plan right here, the measurement that from City Depot Road back, the farthest one will be about 503 feet from the roadway.
Okay.
And that's the end of the R40 zone. If you look on the zoning map and you see where the line is for the zone, it'll go right up to the R40 line and stop right there.
So if I can just be clear, it appears as though it goes, let's see, somewhere around probably 60 or 64, I would guess. City Depot Road is where the entry cut would be, somewhere around that area, is that correct?
When you say, I'm sorry, when you say north, you mean this way, correct?
Correct, yeah, so I'm saying it's coming in at somewhere in the vicinity of the mid-60s, where the road cut would be right now, next to an existing property, is that correct?
Is
No.
the road cut across from Stevens Parkway?
I'm sorry, when I said 503 feet, I was
Yeah, pretty
thinking
much.
how deep off the road you meant.
Yeah.
to the
Right,
right.
well,
Sorry.
ultimately, I think we're saying the same thing. I'm just trying to figure out, it appears as though it's coming in, I'm estimating from a sketch, but it looks like maybe 100 feet, 150 feet in before it begins to make that left-hand turn heading northerly.
Yeah, this is about 200 feet in.
200 feet, okay. And then how far from there? It's 300 feet?
300 feet. that
So
way.
you have existing residences in front of that cul-de-sac at the bottom of the hill, is that correct?
No, the most.
No.
The next house is up here.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
clarify.
Yeah, so
Thank
the
you.
property line here is for Susan Freeman,
Okay, all right, exactly.
so everything is south of her.
Okay,
None of this project wraps around the back.
okay, that's what I was trying to clarify. Thank you.
So where's the current cutting that's going in there now?
Excuse me,
Where's that?
could you
I'm
state your
sorry.
name and address,
Sure.
please?
Don Clegg, 5060 Putnam. I'm just curious, just trying to get an idea, where's the construction that's there now, or the cut that's in there now, is that past that property, or?
The lot that we cut in?
Yeah, yeah. Whereabouts is
Right
that?
It's right here. Right?
Okay, so it's right in that corner. Okay. Now, is there a brook that runs along there? Underneath the road?
It's not a. It's a bordering vegetated wetland. There's it's a main channel runs through there, but it's not a.
Did you finish your question?
I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't hear what you asked.
I wasn't sure if you were finished with your question.
Yes, I was. Thank you.
Another question?
Sure.
So it looks like at least 2 of those buildings, well, I guess my first question is, what's the minimum lot size required for a development like this?
R40 zone, 40,000 square feet.
Okay. And does this currently meet though for each
Yes,
one
the
of those lots?
building commissioner reviewed it when he got his copy for all the standards of lot size, frontage, setback between units, that type of thing.
That's all done,
And it
okay.
complies, yes.
how
Otherwise,
about-
he would have pointed that out.
Even the setbacks, it looks like there's 2 buildings that don't have the proper setback from the agricultural zone. Is that a zoning,
No, he checked that. He said that it did comply with that.
even though half the building is outside that zone?
Not half the
Well,
building.
a
It's-
portion, I'm sorry.
It's a small portion, and he said, I don't have the exact details word for word, but he did go over it with me a couple of weeks ago, that it is allowed to go to that point. There's a little spillover on a duplex that can go a little over the line under our zoning bylaw.
Okay.
Otherwise, he would be telling him he'd have to move it.
Through the chair, setbacks are from the property lines, correct, not a zone line?
Right, but we do have here and there in our bylaw specific language that either says you can go a little over, like in this case, or between a residential zone and an industrial zone, you have to keep the distance of the industrial away from the zone line. So there's a couple of little zone line standards here and there in the bylaw, separate from the property line setbacks.
Okay, so even though the property goes into the agriculture zone, it's not.
Right, yeah. And he went over that carefully as part of his review. Good question, though. I mean, it's obvious, you see it,
Yeah,
and you wonder,
yeah.
is that okay?
Sure. And how about, now I didn't hear the pitch of the road as you get to the highway. Is winter snow buildup a concern with cars sliding out into
No.
Vermont, or is that a pretty level grade at that point? I'm sure it's no worse than J. Davis Road.
Yeah, there's a profile of the road here, and the first 200 feet, it's only a little over 1%. It's fairly flat. So, all the way up basically to the bend, that's only about 1.3% slope.
Now, probably
Sure.
not now, but is there still an intention to move further up into the agriculture zone at some point with additional duplexes, or is that not on the table anymore?
Basically, we're here tonight to
Sure.
discuss this existing project. What he plans to do with the rest of it is not a concern tonight. Yes, the lady over there.
Namaste, Andrea, 53 H. Putnam Road. How many wells are gonna be done?
Going to refer that to Jason.
We haven't we haven't worked that out
We
yet.
don't have any water. I know.
But we have to work that out with the Board of Health, so.
I'm sorry.
We'll be talking to the Board of Health about that to determine what we actually have to do for that. So, I mean, we could drill 9 wells, but I don't think it's necessary.
Just the lady in the back.
Ellen Thibodeau, 50 J. Davis Road. I'm wondering, so where is the water supply coming from for the fire system, for the fire suppression system? It's a cistern, you said, right?
Yeah, 20,000 gallon
Yeah.
cistern the fire department requires for projects
Right.
of this size, yes.
So I was just wondering what the source of the water is for that.
I'm going to refer that to Jason to answer how it's stored.
I mean, there's a couple different ways to do it. I know sometimes the fire department, will keep it full. Other times drainage is hooked up to it. Sometimes there's a well just for that to maintain. We have to work that out with the fire department to see which route they'd like us to go on that.
You'll have to get back to us with those details as part of this
I'll
process.
find that out as well.
You raise a good point that I can think of at least the last subdivision we did in this board about a year or so ago. They did the replenishment through stormwater management. That was a good point. But again, you'll review it with the chief and his
Yep.
staff.
So the final details of that part of the project will come at a later hearing that we're going to be having. He's got to work with the fire department on that. As Alan said earlier, that detail wasn't really clear in the preliminary.
I think one of the major concerns, and I'll speak for myself, not the whole group, is just how the whole water issue is going to be managed, because we're, in general, a little concerned about how many wells it would be, the depth of the wells, because even though, for example, I'm on the other side of the hill, but they're bedrock wells, so new wells that are drilled that can impact other wells. So we're just concerned about the quantity of wells, the water being drawn, how the water will be managed for the cistern and so on.
Yes.
Now, it's going 500 feet up from City Depot Road. How many feet is it from J. Davis Road to the dead end?
I'm going to refer that back to Jason to show you on the drawing.
I mean, we don't actually have everything shown. It's so far away, but I mean, I'm guessing what's the overall, like 1,500 feet?
Couple thousand feet.
It's probably 1,500 feet from J. Davis Road to the first house. But it's down, it's down over the hill and through the woods, so you won't be able to see it from J. Davis.
Yes.
Barbara D. Taranto, 68 Putnam Road. My question is, I wasn't clear as to how, were all the houses being serviced for sewage through a trunk line or
Yes.
what?
Yes.
So there won't be any septic systems
No.
installed?
Nope. All sewer.
Any other concerns from the public at this time? Sure.
I don't know, did you have to, apply through the DEQE for the wetlands along 31, or
We did, yes.
did you get a waiver from them, or?
Through the what?
The
Through
wetlands that
DEP?
are along Route 31?
Yeah, we filed with DEP as well as the Conservation Commission, and that hearing is in 2 weeks on the 21st.
Not yet.
One more question.
Sure.
Are there any zoning variances that you had to go through to get this development in?
No.
There's none?
Members of the board, do we have any other questions at this moment? Alan, if you would.
Since you're on, the night of our next meeting is the 21st when you're on with Concom, and you may have to have some design changes related to whatever happens that evening. Do you want to do the next iteration at our July meeting?
Is it gonna be the 5th?
12th, because of the holiday,
Yeah.
we're off to the 12th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably should. Plus I'll need to get these back to Graves and it's gonna be time to review them.
Right, so I think it makes sense for the 12th.
Yeah.
And Graves would need it, we would need it in the office to give to Graves at least, at the latest, a week before the 12th, but if you get it to us earlier, it only helps.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Procedurally, with the questions about the wells coming up, do we have any say about wells, number of wells, or where they go, or is that Board of Health?
We don't, that's Board of Health. We can ask them to keep us in the loop, obviously, for information, but they have the complete jurisdiction on whether it would be single, multiple. I have had phone calls from a few other people, and maybe you called me, I
That's
can't
my
remember.
husband. Yeah.
And I did say to the
Because he
people.
couldn't be here.
Yeah, I did say to the people who've called that one of the things the Board of Health reviews when they analyze it is to make sure that it doesn't do that type of impact. If their analysis with their consultant shows it, then they're gonna recommend how to change it. So they don't sign off and then that problem happens. That's part of what they delve into. So I can keep in touch with the Board of Health agent just for information purposes, but it's their authority.
So as far as we're concerned, there will be no wells shown on any plans that we approve?
No. I've never seen a definitive subdivision plan include wells because it's not your jurisdiction.
Just wanted to make sure.
Sure, no,
Thank
it's
you.
good to point that out.
Yes, one more back.
I just want, so, I know it isn't part of this phase of the project. How do we find out any progress with the Board of Health as far as the wells and?
If I could ask through the chair, do they require a public hearing process or do you just apply to them?
Just apply for a
Yeah.
well permit.
Then if you could just keep everybody in the loop of the schedule for that, and we could suggest that you talk to Jim Philbrook, the town health
Okay.
agent. You could talk to him now if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure.
And you could ask him, or we could have the applicant just let you know when that's gonna happen. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So I'm sure they're gonna have to go before the Board of Health for, locations and stuff like that, and I'm sure the Board of Health's gonna have requirements that they're gonna have to meet for quantity. And, yeah. Any other questions? Sure, one
I
more.
just want to,
Yep.
one objection I have to the whole project, and it's a minor one, it's just the encroachment out of the R40 zone. And if it meets zoning, that's fine, but that just worries me that it's gonna keep encroaching and what's there. So I just want to put that as an objection.
Well,
Just noted.
that one piece that you do see and that you asked about, the building commissioner went out of his way to tell me that he reviewed it and it does meet the bylaw.
Good.
Yeah, but anything beyond that would.
I didn't see that in the bylaw,
Yeah,
but okay.
it's in one of the sections that he reviews, so.
Just maybe just a little bit on that. It's not that we can take these duplexes and start, adding more
Oh,
beyond
I
its own right.
yeah, I understand.
There's something in it that says you can have so much percentage, I believe, of a building that.
That's basically it, and that's what he reviewed. Yeah. It's just that one unit and that little slice of it right there.
I'd like to make a motion to continue the public hearing.
Second.
All right, we're gonna continue the public hearing to July 12th.
Yes.
Again, at that time, we'll come back with more definitive plans for what's happening. And if anybody wishes to come back at that time, you're more than welcome to come back, and see the rest of the definitive plans. All right? Thank you.
Jason, did you get my message on your question about the Monson project? just the stuff that's related to the revisions, that's it.
Thanks.
Tuned up.
Oh, that's fine.
Again. I don't want to elaborate by a text of how sloppy the phone is.
Oh, yeah, but I don't see it.
No, it was the guy who said I object on the thing, he's the one around.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Kurt went out of his way to say, by the way, that's okay, the bylaw allows a little spillover of the unit.
It's too late to butter us up now, Janet. It's too late. You missed it. Who's he? You're still on TV, so be careful.
All right.
Good night,
Excuse
Janet.
me. Have a good night.
You
too.
Yeah, I'm gonna give this back to you,
Okay. Well, thank you. Beautiful about it.
and we have,
Oh, this is new.
Yeah.
We'll just take a minute on this.
yep,
I met with Frank Bashiri, and he met with Ralph last week. Basically, it's the cost of the project. He's cutting back in terms of the scale of how he'll do the first phase. So, what he's working to redesign, and he asked for you to continue to July 12th, and he feels very confident that he will actually be on your agenda for the 12th, and I can notify the 3 abutters who would like to be here that what you'll see on the 12th is where the previous version showed full development of the site. This will develop from the top back down to a certain point. He'd like to expand the amount of layout for commercial self-storage business and cut back the other buildings that he would be seeking tenants. Someday he would come back and propose that. But by not having to develop that part of the site right now, he doesn't need as much stormwater management, and it makes it more financially feasible. He's gone over it with his financing institution, things like that. So I recommend approving Burton Engineering's request to continue to the 12th, and he's pretty confident he'll actually be here, and we'll move forward, get some progress on the project.
So moved.
all those in favor?
Aye.
This is July 12th meeting.
Yes, we will. Yes, we have no final playoffs with anybody. So we're good.
Alright. 7:35.
For me.
And any,
3 items starting with Russ and Amber's project. I can give you and quickly summarize from yesterday Mike's report. So why don't I pass around the table? I'll give you 3 different items, 2 in your direction.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to recuse myself at this time.
Sure. And 5 in this direction, Jane, and 4 members. Mike, at Russ's request, had a field inspection yesterday, and then I've got a couple of photos from it, then I'll briefly summarize everything from it, and then a quick sketch map he did that helps clarify everything too. 5 on the photos. And 3rd is Mike's. 2 right here, you guys. To summarize as simply as possible, any discussion anyone wishes, Michael followed the same format he's done for the last couple of inspections of listing out the various work items. I had put together and shared with you and with Amber the punch list that basically reflects the same thing in different format. It's just stuff you're working on, you know, all the different items. So Mike summarized the same way he has in the report dated today, June 7th, from yesterday's walkthrough, of what's complete, what's partially complete, and some things that have to be addressed. He took a couple of photos related to the fencing. Photo 1 is chain link, photo 2 is a section of barrier proposal we can get to in a minute. And then he did this nice simple sketchy email that Jane and I printed out that's color-coded regarding the fencing. What I can summarize to describe the fencing in Mike's words, about 75 to 80% of the 4-foot-high black vinyl coated chain link fence around the racetrack is installed. Then there's 2 other locations, and I can be corrected if I'm describing it wrong, but I'm following what I went over with our engineer. What you see in purple to the left is an 8-foot-high earthen berm that's in the process of being constructed in lieu of the proposed fence. And Michael is recommending that as a field adjustment because it makes sense given the lowering elevation of the track, given that the earthen berm will serve the safety purpose as the 4-foot vinyl in that particular location. And he mentions it in the June 7th memo. And if you don't mind, I'll just read from it for a moment. Let me get to it. It's on page 2. Given that the track is already 10 to 12 feet higher than the adjacent parking area, the addition of the 8-foot berm on top, in Graves Engineering's opinion, would provide a sufficient barrier between the track activities and the spectators. It's unlikely that after construction of this berm that the spectators would even be able to access this area of the track. Graves recommends the planning board request that this change be submitted on a plan to the board for review and just record keeping. So at some point, if the board is okay with it, and I agree, I would follow Mike's recommendation, you just have Jason add it to the as-built plan, that type of thing. But it's up to the board to finalize and agree to that, but Graves has recommended it, and I concur with that. The other item is, in blue, it says portable barricade installed, and he mentions in the report, and he shows in the photo what we're talking about. It's photo number 2, portable crowd control barrier installation. And my concern there is just firmness and safety in terms of secured into the ground if that's being proposed for now in lieu of the 4-foot fence. Because barriers for crowd control direct people, but we always have to look at the nature of crowds and individuals and their behavior, and if it's just put on the ground, it can be pushed, it can be adjusted, that type of thing. And so I really think you have to talk with our engineer about ideas for how to get it into the ground solid, to keep it serving as immovable, because it's really about safety. It's not just the direction people go type of thing. So that's where we are on the fencing. The rest of the report summarizes items that are done, items that are partially done, and items that they're working on their checklist. Basically, my basic summary of where we are.
If I may, Madam Chair, just one quick little revision here for the height of the earthen berm. We were really looking to do that as a range from 6 to 8 feet, not 8 feet. It really just has to do with the contour of the space itself. Sometimes it doesn't really call for the 8 foot. You can imagine that is actually quite high, especially in comparison to the 4-foot fence. Mm-hmm. So the earthen berm is actually safer than putting a fence there to begin with.
Michael did use the phrase approximately. I didn't use it, but he did. And if you look on the plan, what in front of the word 8 where he wrote, that's a plus and minus.
Oh.
Yeah, so it is plus and minus.
Okay, so it allows that flexibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we had discussed on the same note of fencing, the portable barricade fencing to be permanently fixed, whether it's with pins or stakes in those feet. You have a hole for it.
Yeah, you'll notice
You
in
can
the
actually
photo.
take the foot
Usually
off.
something like a piece of re-rod, a couple feet length, going down through the holes, which would keep it from sliding.
Or you can actually do it under, that foot piece comes off.
Yeah.
And you can do it right through the hole, put the pin in the ground, and then put the post over it.
I think working with Michael, we should be able to come up with some ideas how to keep that crowd control barrier from sliding left or right. I'm sure you can come up with something on that. Do I have any comments from the board as far as the field adjustment for the plus or minus earthen berm.
That makes sense.
Do we wanna make a recommendation to Michael
I would, yeah.
to,
Yeah. So, well, definitely what I would recommend tonight is that you accept Michael's recommendation and then it just be added to the final as-built that Jason does when the project is at completion.
do I have a motion to, do the field adjustment that's been highlighted in the blue or the purple to, Michael's request?
Yep, make a motion that we do that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And just for way of scheduling those, are planned to be completed by your next meeting.
So if you could get that into writing, that'd be great.
Good.
Alan, any other comments from Michael we should address tonight?
No, I think he summarized everything nicely in the information he gave us for this evening, and I think you're making solid progress, and if you're shooting for the next meeting, keep rolling. Sounds like a plan.
Take, as Alan given you these pieces of paper, you just review it and we'll go from there.
Very good, thank you.
Anything else? You guys all set?
Thank
That's it
you.
for this
Okay,
evening.
all right, have a good one.
Short and sweet.
Thanks for coming in.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right.
More copies?
Just think everyone done.
Yeah, next thing.
Next amp, 2 landscaping performance guarantees.
The 2 Nexamp performance guarantees proposed for this evening are for their Sampson Road project and for the Griffin Road project, and I'll just pass around copies. I made 3 of each that I would recommend after discussion the board consider voting, and then you would authorize the chairman to sign and date today's date on the second page. The first one is Griffin Road, and Graves Engineering has recommended for the landscaping bond that we would carry for a year after Kurt issues the certificate of operation in the near future. The total amount is $24,582 for the Griffin Road one. Sampson Road, Graves Engineering came up with the amount that Nexamp put in the agreement of $21,522. What we've been doing on the solars is they give us a landscaping performance guarantee that we carry for a year from the date that they're up and running with National Grid and get Kurt's certificate of completion. In this particular one, at this point in time, they want to post cash in escrow accounts. You know, they have the right in the future, if they want their cash back with interest accrued, to switch over to an insurance policy or a letter of credit from a bank if they want, but Nexamp feels it's the simplest way for them right now. They don't have to spend the money to pay for the letter of credit or the insurance bond.
So if they do give us cash, we have to put it in an account with it.
Yes, the town treasurer will put it in a separate interest-bearing account, and they would get the interest back upon completion of the 1-year period without any problems. What you're approving this evening is the agreements, and then prior to Kurt issuing the certificate of operation, they'll come in with the checks. So it's a 2-step process.
Mr. Chair, I need to recuse myself from these as well.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, no, that's good. The Griffin Road one?
Yep.
The $24,582.
Yep.
This would be the planting agreement.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to accept that as read to us?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
What was the other one you had?
The other one is Sampson Road, and, sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'll give you a copy of it. Sampson Road, and the dollar amount is $21,522.
These are just held for 1 year, right?
Yes, 12 months.
And this one will be a cash bond too?
Yes, same, they like to post cash.
Do I have a motion to accept the Sampson Road solar
So moved.
planting agreement?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
If they do decide to change their mind legally, they can give us an insurance policy or a letter of credit, but it's saving them money. If they can afford to post the cash,
10%?
yeah. Is it?
Typically, yeah, for a
Really?
lawn is 10%.
That's $5 grand.
Yeah.
Do we sign these now or later?
If you don't mind signing the 6 of them now for 1 minute?
Yep.
Yeah. Jane can date them if you just want to put your signature.
Do you have anything else to discuss while I'm doing this?
Basically, that out on Griffin Road, it worked very well, and I do want to commend them. If you remember in April, they extended the landscaping, and they also extended the fence for the abutter. That worked out very well. So they're basically complete. It's just a final walkthrough with Michael, an as-built sheet, and fighting with National Grid to get plugged into the grid. Frustrating in that respect.
Someone on Brookfield, is that online?
No. They're also waiting. This is
And
immense.
the one on Sampson Road's not online yet. is it?
No? Who's it?
I drove by that today.
Even their own on Snake Hill Road, which National Grid will take ownership from Power Secure, that's not plugged in either. They're not even plugging in their own line. I don't know what the
Income?
issue.
Income's not up to it?
No? Gonna have to send a couple of crews out for a few days.
Oh, you will? Oh, gotcha. All right. I heard the boys going by.
Six. Anything under growth management?
A few items. I already touched base with the chairman on Hammond Woods and Blackwall Drive. It's the time of year that we do the annual Graves Engineering contract extension in June, so I have that under growth management. I've got 2 copies. Graves is slightly going up on the hourly rate. It's about 1.2, 1.3%, less than 1.5%, just a few dollars per hour, which the applicants, as you know, under Massachusetts law, pay through reimbursal. So that's the only thing that's changing on anything, and that's on page 2, the hourly rates. And I recommend the board, unless you have any questions, sign the annual extension. There's signature blocks for once the board votes for all members to sign if they wish.
Anybody want to look at this at the moment? Peter?
We'll see it when you pass it around.
Okay. Alright. This would be for one more year, right, Al?
Yes, another 12 months. It's a June to June that we do every year.
You're just asking for 1%?
About 1.2%. I ran it through a calculator on the hourly rates on page 2, at the top of page 2. The different categories of whether it's Michael himself or one of the staffers that occasionally he sends out, another junior engineer or staff engineer will be a lower rate.
It was about the same last year, very small too, I think,
Yeah.
like cost of living kind of stuff.
Yep, exactly.
Do I have a motion to accept the hourly rate change?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The last item I have under growth management, then I've got my list and some handouts on a few things. I'm just a little frustrated. I'll keep pursuing it. I'm chasing the regional planning agency on the sidewalk project. They had asked to put it aside until May 17th because I was told by the staff that every 2 or 3 years they have to do federal certification for their MPO status, and it was all hands on deck that everyone had to drop projects they were working on and that we'd start again on May 18th. I'm not getting a response. I'm not getting phone calls returned or emails returned, and I could always call the director, Janet Pierce, and I may have to if we don't get back on board, because we have a schedule that was still in good shape if we picked it up tomorrow, working through the summer, finalizing the village district master plan with 15 or 20 sidewalk locations for the future, including the 2 we want to do. And by the fall, we'd be ready for the tier 2 round and everything. And, you know, it's June 7th, and it's 2 to 3 weeks of trying to hear from somebody. So I'll give it till next week, and then if I have to call the executive director there, I don't want to call and complain, I'll just call and say, look, we need to stay on track on this thing. Could you get your staff to get back in the working queue with us, so to speak?
Annual meeting is
I don't mind if you brought it up to anybody,
I
conversation.
can't make it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking about that.
Yep. The last thing on the growth management, I'll completely defer to Jean, but I thought we had a good working conference call the other day on the housing project, and we're heading toward a working meeting next Tuesday with our housing authority and the developer partner, Community Housing Resources of Worcester. I just thought everything we talked about the direction we're going, we'll just
Right.
keep rolling.
There was a couple other questions that she brought up in the later email that actually are sort of mute points. Something about the utilities having to run across the whole property, and they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just picking up from where we ended now, it's less than half of the property. And the same thing with the electric, because the
Yeah.
electric's already on property, it's just picking up.
I don't think they're as hands-on familiar as you at this
No,
stage.
so I think a lot of their questions and doubts, and maybe some of their pricing can change once we discuss it and talk about it, and give them, you know, upfront, okay, this is what you're looking at, you're looking from here to here. And,
Yeah. Mike Andre thought in general that their numbers could be reduced very easily. Yeah. The other thing is, as you know, that the part of the property where they'll build has to be under their ownership, and they were nervous about, well, how do you do that? What's the expense of subdividing and all? And I explained, it's just an A&R plan. You've got a private road, Meadowview, but it doesn't matter whether it's public or private, it's accessible and it's on the official map. So that's just an A&R to split anything.
either
If it-
that, or I thought, this is something we're gonna get cleared up too, where we're always talking about land lease, ground lease.
And that you could do, if that's feasible through the project, you don't even need an A&R.
Right,
Yeah.
it's just putting, you know, drawing your lines where it's gonna be, and
Right.
it'll be a land lease.
On a plot plan attached to your
Right.
lease. But if you did have to, for any reason, do an ownership transfer, even if it's for, say, a 30-year period, then it reverts back or something, it's an A&R, it's not that complicated. And I know Michael said Community Housing Resources, because they don't know what this board deals with on subdivision control, thought it would require some big thing related to subdivision. The road would have to be accepted as a public way. It doesn't work that way, it's not required.
We can clear that up with them on Tuesday.
Good.
Okay.
I can go to my checklist.
You can get out of here early tonight?
Just checking off a few things we already covered. Your next agenda, June 21st, one thing that will be on it is the first night of the public hearing for Barijo Solar's site plan application to, on the eastern part of the Gunter property, put a little less than 2 meg solar project. And because they submitted last week, in front of you to take home is the application rather than mail it to you. I had a good phone call from Roy Gunter the other day, and he's pushing Burton Engineering as quickly as possible, hopefully in the next week or two, to get in the revision for the subdivision also, that will shrink the subdivision to allow this. So Barijo understands that you can't close your hearing and approve Barijo until at the same time we have that revision, and it will dovetail. But on the 21st, you only have the solar. And then we'll catch up in July, August at the worst, but probably July, by getting the subdivision revision side by side on the agenda with it. I haven't heard from any abutters yet, and I know that Dave Albrecht has met with a few abutters, and they're very happy to see that it's going in this direction, the people he spoke to. So that's that. Also, just to keep you in the loop, The other Gunter project will come in the near future too, of the property on the north side of Route 20, the Carroll Hill Road property, that he's proposing some 5-lot reduced frontage and some common driveways and 2 or 3 conventional A&R lots, anywhere from 4 to 5 houses, and that'll require a public hearing. Just a little update. I've been working for the past month on that Business Expansion Journal information for their July-August issue that'll be both in print and online, and reaching out to the folks on parcels, getting information. One person decided not to be part of it. It's his choice. I thought it would be helpful, and it can only help the cause. Everybody else is willing to be part of it, and today I received from Mike Jacobs a nice summary of the information needed for pieces that Bookman Cavago is involved in. I had a phone call with the reporter last week who's doing the Route 20 profile. So what it looks like is there'll be an article both online and print about the Route 20 corridor in general and things happening in Charlton. She's also putting in the article what we have here, such as the Treehouse Brewery, Carl Stortz's upcoming expansion, the nature of what the Route 20 corridor is all about in Central Mass and why it's such a hot issue right now in terms of location and traffic and such like that. Then there'll be the listings of property with 2 of them highlighted, but the rest of them will be included, and that'll also stay on their website in a section of property listings as long as we want. You know, so I've been working with them. They've been showing me how that will be listed, and we'll just keep working on it through the month of June, and as soon as it's up and running, give it to you and give it to anybody else. Touching base on the second parcel that we were going to highlight, I have everything from Frank Tiberi, and the other one really looking to not be as high profile. I was thinking, and I was brainstorming with Peter the other day, well, today, about another one to put as the second one. Anything that you think, because you have familiarity, but looking right behind Pete at the Kozowski one, since we went through the Mass Alliance for Economic Development analysis a few years back, and there's so many positive attributes, and I did talk to Ken Kozowski recently, and he's really positive about being included in the project in general. We could highlight it to the top 2 as the second one. I mean, it was very, very of interest to Campanelli companies at the time before the economy crashed in 2008. Is that one? Yep.
That one now.
Yep. If I can point out for a minute,
Yeah.
a few things. It's 98 acres or so. This is the property boundary line. You've got direct access for hundreds of feet, so you could put proper driveways for any type of economic development with good visibility along Route 20. They have an easement on Route 169 if it was needed for utilities or such, or even a secondary emergency access. They've been a good neighbor and vice versa with Cape and Hill, and Cape and Hill was very comfortable and actually went to the microphone at town meeting to change the zoning to BEP before 2008. And so Campanelli Companies was in the process of considering buying it for a business park, but then in 2008 the economy turned. So, you know, we're back to starting over again. But I just think it would possibly draw some very interested responses for the level of national marketing that the Business Expansion Journal will afford us an opportunity in print and online.
Now there's a sewer line up that way, isn't there?
I'm not that familiar with it. I think a couple other board members might know that part of town more than me.
The sewer line feeds the Mass Pipe.
The sewer line goes to the Mass Pipe, so does water.
Yeah.
The water definitely goes by, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
sewer does too.
Right.
You live both.
Yeah.
Is that still zone BEP, Ellen?
I believe, let me just double check something. Yep, it's still zone BEP. At one point, Ken had talked to us about, and it was several years ago, like 2009, 2010, when the economy was really down, what would we think about rezoning it to residential? And he came in and chatted with the board then, and we really said, no offense, we don't mind if it needed to be rezoned to something else non-residential, commercial, industrial, instead of BEP. And that's something that we work with many people going back and forth between the different types of non-residential zones. but to get back into housing on Route 20 along prime economic development, and he understood at the time and he just dropped the concept. But it's BEP at the moment, which allows a lot of good things, light industrial, R&D, office space, some mixed use stuff.
There's that project that's going in Sturbridge across from the truck stop there, Allied Tools, Allen Tools.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing the inspections there, and the builder told me today that they don't even have a tenant yet, and they're gonna build that 3-story building.
They build it, they will come.
Yeah, build it and they will come. It's a humongous 3 stories they're building. I forget how many square feet.
Wow.
I think we'll, like you said, build it and it will come.
Never know.
No.
All right.
So hopefully we'll have, by the July 12th meeting, everything up and running. A few other items, just wanted to hand out. Jane and I received from, in the mail, and just made copies for the board, a notice from ExxonMobil.
Yes. I think a lot of people got that in the mail.
Yeah, probably the same thing.
Yeah.
If you didn't, it's just an update on where they're heading on putting in the water line, starting in the fall. So it's about a 3-paragraph summary just to let the community know.
They're not gonna start that till the fall of this year, huh?
That's what it says, yeah.
It's on our cards.
Right when school starts.
Okay.
I thought it was
I don't think I got one.
Yeah, me too.
Right.
That's what we were told.
My house, I got one.
Yeah. It says we'll host another community meeting. At the last one, they told you summer, was that it? Yeah. Also, just to remind everybody, earlier in the year, they asked different department heads to review it, and there was a water pump station related to it that will be owned by the Overlook. And under our zoning, privately owned water pump stations need a quick site plan review. And the engineers contacted me at the time and said, we understand. As we move forward, we'll come to the planning board at some point and come in for that. So you're not reviewing the project, but you are reviewing that one pump station. The reason the zoning from way back requires site plan review for private pump stations is just for a quick review to make sure it's not creating a nuisance problem, either location, noise for a neighbor, that type of thing. So it would be a quick one-night review. A couple other quick items. We have 5 more solars in the pre-construction, pre-application pipeline working with me and Mike Andre. Keeping the loop, I mean, of the...
It's amazing they're building the solar farms, but nobody's tapping them in yet.
Yeah.
The pressure is on National Grid to start plugging them in, yeah. Well, a lot of them are, but there's a lot of them backing up, unfortunately, so getting there. Just going through my list and catching a few final items. We left for you a copy to take home of the updated zoning map. I want to thank Matt Franz at Central Mass Regional Planning, who updates it for us. He dropped them off yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it includes the overlay for Carl Stoltz up there. That's on it. And we have large copies too available for anyone who wishes a large copy.
Oh, yeah.
3 final items. Just a reminder, next Tuesday at 6:30, you have a very quick joint session at 6:30 with the selectmen on the annual reappointment of the planning board alternate, Alicia. It's required to, under state law, to be a joint vote. The attorney for the Potter Village cell tower is putting together the disassembly bond, because they're at the point that that's the last thing remaining, so it might be on your next agenda, but we're getting that pretty quick. And the last item I have, just wanted to give you a handout, some further information from the Telegram article, follow up to our conversation last week about retail marijuana. This was the May 23rd Sunday Telegram article that you may or may not have seen, that just repeats one of the points I made in our discussion, that if anybody asks the question, why are we not considering a zoning moratorium on retail? Again, the purpose legally of a zoning moratorium in Massachusetts is if a planning board determines you have a major deficiency or hole in your zoning and you need a timeout from the state. to fill the gap. Well, we don't have that gap. We've discussed that we have site plan review and special permit in commercial and industrial that it would fall under if a retail component came in. We don't allow it in residential, which is 80% of the town. But as somebody says in this article, there's a statewide moratorium anyway, with the governor freezing everything until later in 2018. That has the same function as a local moratorium, which again confounds me that a handful of towns are passing moratoriums. When I was at the Growth Management Conference, Smart Growth Conference in Worcester, I was talking with 3 or 4 of the planners, and I asked them, they had the same reaction as me. Why anyone would pass a zoning moratorium? Maybe it's comfort locally, and they feel that they want to just feel that way, but doesn't see a need for that. And this article just reflects some of that.
Once the state moratorium is lifted, even the towns that had their own, they would have to be lifted at the same time, or?
Well, the time period for a moratorium that is granted in Massachusetts wouldn't be longer than that anyway.
Okay.
You usually get a 1-year one. It's pretty rare to get a 2-year one. Even if you did, it would just be a month or 2 beyond that at this stage. So the ones that have been granted dovetail with the statewide freeze the governor enacted anyway, while they set up the Cannabis Control Commission, while they hold public hearings in the next 2017 into early 2018 on regulations and get feedback across the state. So we're in a statewide moratorium anyway.
And that is strictly on recreational.
Yes, right, the
And I think
medical.
a lot of people are getting it so confused between recreational and medical.
Medical was passed several years ago, and it's a
Right.
different structure, a different entity, different legality
But as soon
entirely.
as it comes into place, though, the medical ones will be able to sell recreational. So
They have the
they'll
right to apply for that
Right.
and to seek that through state and local. And the way the ballot language is written in part of it, from what I've seen at the 2 workshops I went to and the one that Kurt went together with me, they explained to us that they get a priority. If there's a couple of entities that are trying to get the approval, the state gives the existing open medical one priority versus someone new coming along and saying, I'd like a retail from scratch. I guess the idea is centralizing rather than scattering more through communities.
Hot topic.
Yeah.
Anything else on the growth management?
Just a reminder again, our summer schedule, unless we need to add meetings for some reason. 2 weeks from tonight, June 21st, July 12th, August 9th, and then in September we're back to the 1st and 3rd Wednesday.
July 12th is the only one I might not be able to make. Coming back from vacation on the 11th.
Sounds good. So my others, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
2 quick questions. For Tuesday night's meeting, at the selectmen's meeting, who would be able to, if we at least wait?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay. Can I ask a favor of you to contact us, like, Monday to remind us, or Tuesday morning? Remind us.
Oh, yeah.
I'll
That always
try.
helps.
It's not hard.
Thank you.
I shall follow everybody.
Okay.
We have
And-
lots of packages, we'll see.
And the other question is, got these report from the fire department. You got it mixed up with Kurt's. We didn't get one.
Oh, I'm sorry, hang on a minute then. Let me just pull it out so you can take it home. Sorry, I'm handing out of stuff, I'm mixing of everything. So, I gave you the Graves one.
Twice.
Yeah. No,
Kurt's.
yeah,
No,
Kurt's,
it's
Kurt's twice.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got, I gave you the fire department one, right? Because I only
No,
have.
they don't
That's
have
one we
that
didn't
That's
get.
what we didn't get.
Where'd it go? Hang on a minute.
Maybe you might have copied Kurt's twice by
Yeah, I
mistake,
think
because they
so.
look
You
alike.
think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'll do
That'd
is,
be my guess.
I'll
Yeah.
copy it and we'll get it to you for the
Yeah,
next packet.
perfect.
Alright.
Yep, no
Sounds
problem.
great.
Sorry about that.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah.
That's it, because that's all I have.
All right.
Put it in the file, so I won't lose it. Thank you. One last thing, it's that time of the fiscal year that Jane and I have lose it and use of vacation time, so we're scattering them, single days and half days here and there.
Leaving early.
I'll be out tomorrow, she'll be out Monday. We'll
Okay.
counter cover
Okay.
across the board.
That will also get somebody in the office if somebody calls.
Yeah, we're in good
That's
shape.
right. Any other thing with pros management or?
No, thank you,
Plan
Mr.
board?
Chairman. We're good.
Anybody here have any questions
Nope.
to discuss?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.